Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
The autumn chill nipped at Daniel as he navigated through the crowded sidewalks of downtown New York City. His phone buzzed, a reminder of the upcoming presentation on xenolinguistics he was due to give. As he dodged between the streams of commuters, a figure caught his eye. A woman, distinctly non-human, stood hesitantly by the curb, her eyes wide as she took in the towering skyscrapers and the sea of people. "Excuse me, are you lost?" Daniel asked, approaching her with a cautious smile. The woman looked at him, her silvery eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions. "I might be," she admitted, her voice carrying a melodic accent unfamiliar to human ears. "I am Scylla, from Traxia." "Daniel." He introduced himself, extending a hand. "What brings you to Earth, Scylla?" "To learn, to see." Scylla's voice trailed off as she looked around, clearly overwhelmed. "Your world is very different from mine." Daniel chuckled softly. "I can imagine. Would you like some help getting around?" Scylla nodded, her gaze settling back on him. "I would appreciate that, Daniel." As they walked, Daniel pointed out various landmarks and explained their significance. Scylla listened intently, her fascination growing with every word. They stopped at a small cafe, and over coffee, Daniel learned more about Scylla's mission. A cultural exchange program meant to foster understanding between humans and Traxians. "So, what's the biggest shock so far?" Daniel inquired, watching her reaction to her first sip of coffee. Scylla considered the question, a small smile playing on her lips. "The noise, the chaos. It's exhilarating yet frightening." "You'll get used to it," Daniel assured her. "New York is known for its hustle and bustle. It's part of its charm." Their conversation flowed effortlessly as they discussed their respective worlds. Daniel found Scylla's perspective refreshing. Seeing his own planet through her eyes gave him a renewed appreciation for Earth. "Would you show me more of your city?" Scylla asked, her curiosity unabated. "Of course," Daniel replied. "There's plenty to see. And maybe you can teach me something about Traxia too." "It would be my pleasure," Scylla said, her smile widening. As the day turned to evening, the lights of the city began to twinkle on, each one a star brought down to Earth. Daniel and Scylla continued their exploration, their bond strengthening with each shared experience. New York, a city that had seen countless tales unfold within its embrace, was now the backdrop to another extraordinary story between a human and an alien, both far from home yet finding common ground. The city's vibrant energy seemed to promise countless possibilities for their newfound friendship. The next morning found Daniel and Scylla at a bustling local diner, a place Daniel frequented for its unassuming charm and hearty breakfasts. As they slid into a booth, Scylla's gaze darted around, taking in the eclectic mix of patrons and the sizzle of bacon on the grill. Daniel smiled, handing her the menu. "You'll like the pancakes here, best in the city." Scylla eyed the menu curiously. "What are pancakes?" "They're a kind of cake you cook on a griddle, usually sweet and served with syrup," Daniel explained. "Here you'll see." The waitress came over, and Daniel ordered for both of them. Once she left, Scylla leaned in, lowering her voice. "I have many questions about your language and customs, Daniel. In Traxia, we share knowledge openly. Is it the same here?" "It can be," Daniel replied. "I'm an open book for you, Scylla. Ask away." "Why do people rush so much here?" she asked, watching a couple hurriedly downing their coffee at the next table. Daniel chuckled. "Everyone's in a hurry to get somewhere. Work, meetings, you name it. Time is a precious commodity in New York." Scylla nodded thoughtfully. "On Traxia, we believe time is a cycle. It always returns to you. It's interesting to see it valued differently." Their food arrived, and Scylla watched intently as Daniel showed her how to pour syrup over her pancakes. She tentatively mimicked his actions, then took a bite. Her face lit up with delight. "These are delicious." "I told you," Daniel grinned. "So, what's Traxia like?" "It's quieter, more connected to nature," Scylla described. "Our cities are built around the land, not over it. We live with it, understanding its value." "That sounds peaceful," Daniel mused. "Here, Sometimes we forget we're part of something bigger until nature reminds us, usually with a storm or something. Their meal continued with a lively exchange of questions and answers, with Daniel learning about Trosian society, a community deeply rooted in ecological symbiosis and holistic education. Sila, in turn, was fascinated by human expressions of culture and individualism. After breakfast, they decided to walk off their meal in Central Park. The park was a flurry of morning joggers and dog walkers. Sila paused to watch children playing near a fountain, their laughter carrying through the air. Children are taught to find their own path in life on Traxia. Is it the same here? Sila asked, her tone curious. Sort of, Daniel said. We guide them, but ultimately, they choose their own way. But there's a lot of debate about the best way to do that. They walked along a path lined with trees, their leaves whispering in the gentle breeze. Sila listened intently to Daniel's stories about his childhood, his time at university, and his dreams of helping foster interstellar communication. You're very dedicated to your work, Sila observed. It's more than work. It's a passion. I believe in understanding, in connection. That's why I'm so glad to meet someone from another world, Daniel confessed. And I am grateful to meet someone so welcoming and knowledgeable, Sila replied, her voice warm. Their walk led them to a quiet spot overlooking a small lake. They sat on a bench, watching as a pair of ducks glided across the water. Sila, this might be forward, but I'd love to learn your language. Would you teach me? Daniel asked, turning to her with hopeful eyes. Sila's face brightened. I would like that very much. And perhaps you can continue to help me understand your world better. As they agreed, a mutual commitment was formed, not just to exchange knowledge, but to build a bridge between their worlds, one word at a time. Daniel decided to take Sila to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, thinking it would be the perfect place for her to understand the breadth of human history and creativity. As they stood before the iconic steps of the museum, Sila looked up at the grand facade with awe. This place contains artifacts from your history? Sila asked, her voice a mixture of excitement and reverence. Yes, centuries of art and culture from around the world are housed here, Daniel explained as they walked through the towering doors. Inside, they wandered from one exhibit to another. Daniel was keen to show Sila the Egyptian artifacts first, considering their historical significance. Standing before the massive statues and intricately painted sarcophagi, Sila reached out tentatively, stopping just short of touching the ancient stone. People once believed these rulers were gods, she asked, her expression puzzled. Yes, they did. It's fascinating how belief systems have shaped societies, isn't it? Daniel replied, watching her reaction closely. Sila nodded slowly. In Traxia, we believe all life is interconnected through the life stream. It is not governed by gods, but by a collective energy. That's a beautiful concept, Daniel said, genuinely intrigued. Humans have always grappled with the idea of what connects us, whether it's spiritual, physical, or something else entirely. They moved on to the Greek and Roman sculptures, Daniel explaining the myths and stories behind each statue. Sila listened intently, occasionally asking questions that made Daniel think about these stories in ways he never had before. When they reached the modern art section, Sila paused in front of Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. This is quite chaotic, she observed, tilting her head. It's considered a pivotal piece in modern art, breaking away from traditional forms to explore new perspectives, Daniel explained. How do humans derive meaning from such abstraction? Sila asked, her tone curious. It's about emotion, I think. The artist expresses something felt, rather than something seen. Viewers connect with that emotion, Daniel suggested. I see. Trosian art is very literal. We use it to record history, not express emotion. This is very different, Sila mused. Their tour continued with discussions about various cultures and epochs, each artwork sparking a new conversation about values, conflicts, and the human condition. By the time they reached the Impressionist paintings, Sila seemed deeply reflective. These paintings, they feel like they're capturing a moment, an impression, as you said, Sila remarked as they stood before Monet's water lilies. Exactly. It's about capturing the light, the feeling of a scene, Daniel nodded. What do you think of them? They're peaceful. I can feel the calmness the artist saw in these scenes, Scylla replied, her voice soft. As the day waned, they found themselves in the museum's cafe, cups of coffee in hand, overlooking Central Park through the large windows. This was enlightening, Daniel. I feel I understand humans a little better now. Their fears, their loves, their wars, and their peace, Scylla said thoughtfully. And I've gained a new perspective on Traxia and your views on life and art, Daniel replied. It's amazing, isn't it? How sharing our cultures can open our eyes to new ways of seeing the world. Yes, it is, Scylla agreed, a smile playing on her lips. Thank you for sharing this part of your world with me. It was my pleasure, Daniel said, raising his cup. To new perspectives, Scylla echoed, clinking her cup against his. The streets of Manhattan buzzed with the vibrant energy of a city that never sleeps, and Daniel decided it was time for Scylla to experience a different aspect of human culture, the nightlife. They found themselves in front of a quaint jazz club known for its lively atmosphere and excellent music. The soft glow of the neon sign cast a warm light on the sidewalk, inviting them in. Jazz is a fundamental part of American culture, Daniel explained as he held the door open for Scylla. It's all about improvisation and feeling the moment. Inside, the dim lighting and the intimate setting created a cozy ambience. They took a seat close to the stage where a quartet was setting up. Scylla's eyes were wide with curiosity, taking in the array of instruments and the casually dressed musicians tuning up. What should I expect from this music? Scylla asked, her voice tinged with excitement. It's expressive, soulful. It can be both melancholic and exuberant, Daniel replied. Let's just feel it. As the band started playing, a slow, mellow tune filled the room. The saxophonist took the lead, his notes curling into the air like smoke, weaving a story of longing and late nights. Scylla seemed transfixed, her body slightly swaying with the rhythm. This music, it speaks without words, she murmured. Daniel nodded, smiling at her reaction. It's about the emotion behind the notes. Jazz often tells a story about the human experience, about struggle, love, and everything in between. The next piece was more upbeat, with the pianist's fingers dancing rapidly across the keys, prompting a few cheers from the audience. The change in tempo seemed to lift the entire room, and even Scylla clapped along, caught up in the energy. During a brief intermission, Daniel leaned over the small table, closer to Scylla. You seem to enjoy it, he noted. It's enchanting, Scylla agreed. Your world has such rich layers of expression. As the band resumed, the mood shifted to a romantic, soft tune. The saxophone's velvety sound filled the space between them. Daniel felt the moment was right and reached across the table to gently take Scylla's hand. She looked surprised but didn't pull away. How do you feel about this, Scylla? Daniel asked, his voice low. Scylla turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the dim light. I am still learning what these feelings mean, Daniel. It is new. Daniel smiled reassuringly. It's new for me, too, but it feels right. They spent the rest of the evening talking softly, sharing stories and dreams between sets. The music continued to envelop them, a backdrop to the growing connection. When the band finally played their last note, the club erupted in applause. Walking out into the cooler night air, Daniel and Scylla felt a palpable shift in their relationship. The city lights blurred around them as they walked side by side, closer than before. Thank you for tonight, Daniel. I feel closer to understanding human emotion, Scylla confessed as they stopped at her hotel. And I'm closer to understanding you, Daniel replied. I hope we can share more experiences like this. Scylla nodded, her expression thoughtful. I would like that very much. As they said goodnight, Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of anticipation and contentment. He watched her disappear into the hotel, the soft jazz notes still echoing in his mind, blending with the myriad sounds of the city. Tonight, something beautiful had sparked between them, under the watchful eyes of the stars and the rhythmic heartbeat of the city. The soft glow of dawn crept through the curtains as Daniel prepared his apartment for another visit from Scylla. He wanted to create a comfortable and welcoming space where they could continue their explorations of each other's cultures and, perhaps, delve deeper into their personal connection. When Scylla arrived, She carried a small, ornate box. "I brought something from Traxia," she said, handing it over to Daniel. "It's a traditional puzzle, meant to teach the solver about the balance of our ecosystem." Daniel examined the beautifully crafted pieces, each interlocking seamlessly with the others. "It looks complex," he remarked, impressed by the craftsmanship. "It is," Scylla agreed, "but it also brings clarity once solved, much like understanding a new culture." They sat together at the dining table, the puzzle pieces spread out before them. As they worked through the puzzle, their conversation meandered from Tracian traditions to human philosophy. Each shared thoughts on their society's ways of resolving conflicts and maintaining harmony. "Traxia sounds like a place that values deep understanding," Daniel noted as he connected two pieces. "It does," Scylla replied. "We believe that understanding leads to peace." "What about Earth? What have you learned from your history?" Daniel paused, considering her question. "We've learned a lot, though sometimes it feels like we learn the same lessons over and over. But there's a beauty in the struggle, a beauty in striving to do better." Their hands occasionally brushed as they reached for the same pieces, and each touch lingered a little longer than necessary. The air between them was charged with a gentle but undeniable attraction. After completing the puzzle, Daniel suggested they take a break with some music. He chose a soft, instrumental playlist, the kind that filled the room with a soothing ambience. They moved to the couch, a more relaxed setting. Scylla looked more at ease, nestled into the soft cushions. "This music, it's calming," she said, closing her eyes briefly. "It's meant to be," Daniel replied. He watched her, admiring how the morning light highlighted the unique contours of her face. "Daniel," Scylla began, her voice hesitant, "back at the jazz club, when you held my hand, it was an unfamiliar feeling for me, but not unpleasant." Daniel turned to face her, their eyes meeting. "I felt it too," he admitted. "I wasn't sure how you'd feel about it. In Traxia, we don't often show affection in such ways, not until there's a deep mutual understanding," Scylla explained. "But with you, I think I am ready to explore these human expressions." Encouraged by her words, Daniel reached out to touch her hand again. This time, Scylla didn't hesitate. She intertwined her fingers with his, a smile playing on her lips. "May I?" Daniel asked softly, leaning closer. Scylla nodded, and Daniel gently kissed her. It was a cautious, tender kiss, an exploration that promised more. As they pulled away, they both were slightly breathless. "I want to understand all of you, Scylla," Daniel whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And I you," she whispered back, her eyes bright. They spent the rest of the morning in quiet conversation, sharing more about their dreams and fears. It was a delicate dance of words and touches, each learning and yielding in turn. As Scylla prepared to leave, she paused at the door, looking back at Daniel. "Today was enlightening," she said. "Thank you for being so patient with me." "Thank you for trusting me," Daniel replied, his heart full. "I look forward to our next puzzle." With a final smile, Scylla left, leaving Daniel with a sense of anticipation and a deepening connection that he had never before experienced. The morning after their intimate encounter was fraught with an unspoken tension. Scylla arrived at Daniel's apartment with the same grace she always carried, but her usual bright demeanor seemed dimmed. Daniel noticed the change immediately, his concern evident as he greeted her at the door. "Good morning, Scylla. You seem different today. Is everything all right?" Daniel asked, searching her face for clues. Scylla hesitated, her eyes avoiding his. "I am uncertain," she finally admitted. "Last night was very special, Daniel, but I am struggling to process these new feelings." Daniel led her into the living room, where they both sat on the couch, maintaining a polite distance. "It's okay to feel unsure. We can talk about it, or give it some time. Whatever you need," he offered gently. "It's not just that," Scylla continued, her voice faltering slightly. "In Traxia, emotions are not so volatile. What I am experiencing now, it is overwhelming. I fear I may lose myself in these feelings." Daniel's heart sank a little. He had hoped their closeness would bring them comfort, not confusion. "I'm sorry, Scylla. I never wanted to make you feel uncomfortable." "It's not your fault," she assured him quickly. "You've been nothing but kind." It's just very new to me, this human way of diving deep into emotions. There was a long silence as they both pondered their next words carefully. Maybe we rush things, Daniel suggested. We can take a step back, focus on our friendship first. Sila nodded, looking relieved but still somewhat sad. Perhaps that would be best. I need to understand my own heart before I can share it. Daniel felt a pang of disappointment, but he knew it was important to respect her feelings. Of course, Sila. Let's do that. To lighten the mood, Daniel proposed a walk in the nearby park, hoping the fresh air and nature would help ease the awkwardness that had settled between them. As they walked side by side, they discussed lighter topics, such as the latest books Daniel had been reading and Sila's fascination with Earth's diverse ecosystems. However, the easy rapport they once shared seemed strained, and their laughter was tinged with a cautiousness that had not been there before. I've been meaning to ask, Daniel said as they watched children play by a pond. How do relationships usually develop in Traxia? Is there a protocol? Sila smiled faintly at the question. It's very structured. We spend a lot of time understanding each other's minds before we express anything as deep as love. It's all very methodical. That sounds quite different from human relationships, Daniel mused. Many of us go with our feelings, sometimes without much thought. That spontaneity is both thrilling and terrifying to me, Sila confessed. As the day drew to a close, they found themselves back at Daniel's apartment, saying an awkward goodbye. Thank you for today, Daniel. I do appreciate your understanding, Sila said, her tone genuine. And thank you for being honest with me, Sila. I hope we can find a way forward that makes you feel more comfortable, Daniel replied, holding on to a thread of hope that they could bridge this gap. As Sila left, Daniel closed the door behind her and leaned against it, feeling a mix of emotions. He was determined to navigate this complex web of interstellar relationships, even if it meant taking some steps back to eventually move forward together. After a day spent reflecting alone, Sila returned to Daniel with a new perspective. She had spent her time wandering through a bustling artisan market, where she observed various artists at work, each absorbed in their own creative process. Their passion and unspoken emotions resonated with her, sparking a realization about her feelings. As she entered Daniel's apartment, she carried with her a small painting she had purchased, a vibrant abstract piece that captured the chaos and beauty of human emotions. Daniel welcomed her with a cautious smile, noting the artwork in her hands. That's beautiful, Daniel remarked, pointing at the painting. What inspired you to choose it? Sila placed the artwork on the table, her eyes meeting his. It reminded me of our conversations. It's chaotic, yet there's something deeply touching about it. It made me think about us, about me. Daniel offered her a seat, and they both sat, the painting between them. What about us? He asked gently. I've been thinking about what you said, about how humans dive into their feelings, Sila began, and how I told you about Tracian restraint. I realize I may have been too quick to judge, too slow to let myself feel. Daniel listened intently, his heart beating a little faster. I admire the passion humans have, the way you allow yourselves to experience life fully. It's frightening but also liberating, she continued, her voice stronger now. I want to try to understand that, to understand you better. Daniel reached out, covering her hand with his. And I want to understand you, too. But we'll take it at your pace, no rush. Sila nodded, her expression softening. Thank you, Daniel, for being so patient and for giving me the space to figure this out. Feeling more confident, Daniel suggested, why don't we start over, in a sense? We keep learning about each other, keep exploring what it means to be friends, and maybe more, but only if and when you feel ready. Sila agreed, and the conversation that followed was light yet meaningful. They discussed their favorite books and movies, shared amusing anecdotes from their childhoods, and even ventured into their hopes for the future. It was a simple dialogue, but it laid down the roots of deeper understanding. As the evening grew darker, Daniel decided to cook dinner, turning the preparation into a joint effort. Sila proved to be surprisingly adept in the kitchen, her precise nature lending itself well to following recipes and measuring ingredients. Cooking is another form of art, isn't it? Sila remarked as she stirred a pot on the stove. It is, Daniel agreed. It's about mixing the right ingredients, the right flavors, to create something good. Kind of like relationships. Sila laughed, a sound that filled the room with warmth. I suppose it is. They ate their meal together, enjoying the fruits of their joint effort. The food was delicious, but even more delightful was the ease that had returned to their interactions. It felt like a new beginning, one that held the promise of something profound and beautiful. As Sila prepared to leave, she turned to Daniel at the door. Today was wonderful, she said sincerely. I feel happy. Daniel smiled, feeling a surge of hope. Me too, Sila. Let's keep this going. I would like that very much, Sila replied, stepping out into the cool night air. Watching her go, Daniel felt a sense of peace settle over him. They were on the right path, one step at a time, building something that could withstand the vast distances between their worlds. The warm light of early evening bathed Daniel's apartment as he and Sila sat side by side, looking over a collection of photographs Daniel had taken on his travels around the world. Each photo sparked a story, a memory that Daniel shared eagerly, with Sila listening intently, her fascination with human culture as strong as ever. These places, they look so different from each other, Sila remarked, pointing to a picture of a bustling street, seen in Morocco followed by a serene landscape in Norway. Yeah, Earth is wildly diverse. But that's what makes it beautiful, don't you think? The variety? Daniel said, his eyes gleaming with pride. Sila nodded, her expression thoughtful. Traxia has its diversity too, but it's more subtle. Different kinds of forests, different ecosystems, but all connected through the life stream. As I've mentioned, I remember, Daniel smiled, and I'd love to see it myself one day. Sila looked at him, surprise and delight mingling in her eyes. Would you? Travel to Traxia? I mean, if you'd be my guide, yes, absolutely, Daniel replied earnestly. The conversation shifted as they began to plan out a hypothetical trip to Traxia, discussing what Daniel might need to prepare and what he should expect. Sila described the vibrant colors of the Tracian skies, the towering trees that seemed to touch the stars, and the gentle, flowing waters that carried the essence of life itself. It sounds like a paradise, Daniel said, his voice wistful. To me, it is, Sila agreed. Just as Earth has become a special place for me, thanks to you. They continued talking late into the evening, their plans becoming more detailed, their excitement growing. It was during these moments of shared dreams and laughter that Daniel realized how much Sila had come to mean to him, and how much he wanted to explore not just her world, but their potential future together. As the night drew to a close, Daniel turned to Sila, taking her hands in his. Sila, these past weeks have been incredible. I've learned so much from you, about Traxia, about myself. I think there's something truly special between us. Sila's hands tightened around his. I feel it too, Daniel. I was afraid at first, unsure of these new emotions. But now, I embrace them. I embrace us. Then let's make a promise, Daniel suggested. No matter what happens, we'll explore this, us, together. And we'll visit each other's worlds, learn from them, grow together. I would like that very much, Sila said, her voice steady and sure. They made their promise to each other, sealing it with a kiss that spoke of mutual respect, deep affection, and a burgeoning love that had crossed the vast expanse of space to bring them together. The following morning, as Sila prepared to return to her ship and make the necessary arrangements for Daniel's visit to Traxia, they revisited the promise they had made. Are you sure you're ready for what's to come? Daniel asked, his tone tinged with concern and excitement. I am, Sila affirmed, her confidence radiating. Because I have you with me. And together, we can face anything. With those final words, they stepped out into the new day, ready to embark on an adventure that neither of them had anticipated, but both of them needed. Earth and Traxia, once mere points of light in the vast universe, were now intimately connected through the hearts of two beings who had dared to explore, to understand, and ultimately, to love.